Imagine driving 3 hours to scatter your grandfather's ashes, only to find an entire neighborhood built on your land. My name's Dakota Flint. I'm 47, a structural engineer with oil-stained hands and a truck that wheezes more than it roars. I'm not rich, not famous, and certainly not the kind of man people listen to, except for one thing. I own 47 acres of Colorado land my grandfather bought half a century ago. Paid in full. No mortgage, no liens, no tricks. When my grandfather, William Flint, passed away in 2019, he left me 2 things: the deed to that forest property, and a handwritten note tucked in between yellowed tax receipts. It read, "Don't let the bastards take what's yours." At the time, I thought it was just an old man's paranoia. I didn't realize it was prophecy. Life hit hard after his death. Divorce, 2 kids in college, endless overtime just to keep the lights on. I didn't visit the land for 3 years, but I paid my property taxes every April like clockwork. $6,400, always online, always on time. I had the receipts, digital and printed. That land was untouched, paid for, and legally mine. Then came August 2022. I finally decided to drive out and scatter Grandpa's ashes beneath the pines where we used to camp. Highway 36 turned into a fire road just as I remembered, but halfway up the slope my stomach twisted. The trees, gone, every single one of them. In their place stood a shiny new subdivision. Rows of beige stucco homes, manicured lawns, and street lamps glowing even in daylight. A massive stone archway stood where the forest once began. The carved letters read, Ridgeline Heights, a Whitmore luxury community. I thought my GPS had glitched. I checked the coordinates 3 times. Same results. This was my land. At the gated entrance, a security guard stepped out. "Residents only," he said, squinting at me like I was trespassing. "I am the owner," I replied, showing him a photo of my deed on my phone. He smirked. "Sure you are, buddy. And I'm Elon Musk. Turn around." Before I could argue, a white Range Rover rolled up behind me. Out stepped a woman who looked like she lived in a permanent magazine cover. Mid-50s, perfect tan, white linen outfit, and a Rolex that screamed money. "Problem, Ray?" she asked the guard, barely glancing at me. "This guy says he owns the land," the guard said. Her head tilted, eyes flicking over my worn boots and faded jacket. "Oh, how adorable," she said. "Sweetheart, if you're looking for construction work, we're not hiring day labor right now. Leave your number at the office." "I'm not here for a job," I replied. "My grandfather was William Flint. This is my property." Her expression sharpened, and for the first time she actually looked at me. "I'm Cassandra Whitmore, president of the Ridgeline Heights HOA," she said smoothly. "Our title company confirmed this land was abandoned. Under Colorado's adverse possession law, it's legally ours now. You can talk to our attorney, Brian Keir, if you want, though I wouldn't waste your time." She reached into her purse, pulled out a sleek business card, and handed it to me like she was afraid I'd smudge it. "Oh, and just so you know," she added, "all 96 homes are sold. Families are moving in by Thanksgiving. We've already deposited $16 million in pre-sales." Then she lifted her phone and snapped a photo of my license plate. "Just in case you decide to come back and vandalize anything," she said sweetly. "People like you never win against people like us." Something about that moment stuck with me. The smell of fresh concrete, the pop, pop, pop of a nail gun in the background, the quiet arrogance in her voice. It wasn't just theft. It was entitlement. I drove home that night, hands shaking on the steering wheel, the ashes of my grandfather still sitting in the passenger seat. At home, I laid everything out on my kitchen table, the 1971 deed, the tax receipts, the county maps. Cassandra had threatened me, photographed me, and called me a squatter, but she'd also given me exactly what I needed: a name, a company, and a paper trail. The next morning, I called the number on the card. "Law office of Brian Keir," a polished voice answered. "This is Dakota Flint. I need to speak with Mr. Keir about Ridgeline Heights." A pause. "Oh yes, Mr. Keir anticipated your call. He's authorized me to offer a nuisance settlement of $15,000 if you'll sign a quitclaim deed by Friday." $15,000. For land worth over $4 million. I'd learned about quitclaim deeds during my divorce. They're basically a legal surrender. You sign away your ownership without anyone promising that they even own what you're giving up. It's the paperwork version of saying, "Fine, take it." I hung up without another word. That evening I called my old friend Marcus, a civil engineer in Cheyenne, and told him everything. His advice came fast. Call Lydia Chen. She's a monster in court. Beat a railroad company so bad they offered her a job just to make her stop. Her consultation fee was $500. I paid it on my credit card, half praying it wouldn't bounce. Lydia's office smelled like lemon polish and old law books. She looked like someone who didn't waste words. Gray hair pulled back, glasses hanging from a chain, pen ready. She listened to my story from start to finish, not interrupting once. When I finally stopped talking, she said quietly, "Show me your tax records." I handed over the thick folder of receipts, emails and county statements, every payment from 2019 to now, plus copies from my grandfather's archives dating back 50 years. She flipped through them slowly, then closed the folder and looked at me for the first time. "You're about to make some very rich people very angry," she said. Then a small, deliberate smile curved across her face. "Let's begin. If you want to fight thieves, you don't start with fists, you start with paperwork." Lydia Chen didn't waste time with small talk. The next morning she called me at 6:47 a.m., the kind of hour that told me this woman didn't sleep, she recharged. "Dakota, bring every document you have to the courthouse annex at 9. We're filing an injunction." I hadn't even finished my coffee. When I arrived, Lydia was already at the clerk's counter, crisp suit, black coffee in one hand, manila folders stacked like ammo. She motioned me over without looking up. "Ridgeline Heights," she said to the clerk. "We're filing to prevent any further transfer of title until ownership is verified." The clerk stamped the forms, and Lydia exhaled like a sniper taking a clean shot. Then she turned to me. "Now," she said, "we go hunting." By noon, we were sitting across from the Boulder County Recorder's Office supervisor, a man named Graham who looked like he'd been buried under paperwork since the 1980s. Lydia handed him a flash drive and a printed packet. "These are official tax records from the Flint property, continuous payments for over 50 years, she said. "Now explain to me how this land was permitted for subdivision." Graham hesitated. His eyes flicked between me, Lydia, and the computer screen. "Well, there was a developer affidavit filed in 2020 stating the property was abandoned. It came with a notarized deed transfer." Lydia leaned forward. "From whom?" He scrolled. "A William J. Flint." My chest tightened. "That's my grandfather's name. He died in 2019. Lydia's voice turned cold. Then someone forged his signature. She copied every file, plats, permits, signatures, and thanked Graham with a smile that wasn't really a smile. Outside, she said, "We've got them." I asked, "So, what now?" She stopped, faced me squarely. "Now we make them regret ever seeing your name on a piece of paper." That night, my phone blew up, emails from Ridgeline Heights HOA Legal, a cease and desist notice claiming I was spreading false ownership information online. I hadn't even posted anything. Cassandra was playing dirty already. The next morning, Lydia called again. "We're going to their office," she said simply. "Bring your deed and keep quiet." The Whitmore Development headquarters sat on the edge of town. Glass walls, a fountain, and the kind of receptionist who said, "Can I help you?" Like she really meant, "Don't bother me." When she heard Lydia's name, her tone changed immediately. "Mr. Keir will be right out." He appeared within a minute, a polished man in his 40s with silver hair and a smile you could sell insurance with. "Ms. Chen," he said, extending a hand. "Pleasure." Lydia didn't take it. "You filed a fraudulent transfer on my client's property," she said flatly. "The original owner, William Flint, died before your client ever touched that land." Keir chuckled, too calmly. "Our records show otherwise. The state recognizes adverse possession after a 3-year lapse. The developer followed every legal channel." "Except," Lydia said, sliding a paper across the table, "the part where taxes were paid every single year, without interruption." That wiped the smile right off his face. For 10 silent seconds, the room felt colder. Then Keir said, "Even if your client proves ownership, this will take years. Construction is complete, homes are sold, families are living there. Do you really want to displace innocent people?" I leaned forward for the first time. I didn't build on anyone's land, I said. They built on mine. Lydia stood. Expect a federal injunction by Monday. You'll be hearing from us. Outside, I exhaled the breath I'd been holding since we walked in. Lydia just said he's bluffing. They know they're in trouble. 3 weeks later, things got worse before they got better. Ridgeline Heights social media pages started posting statements calling me a con artist, trying to extort hard-working families. Someone even uploaded a blurred photo of me at the gate that day. The caption read, "Local man attempts to scam homeowners with fake deed claim." My inbox filled with hate mail. HOA members called me names I won't repeat. Cassandra had turned the entire neighborhood against me before I'd even stepped foot inside again. Then Lydia called, calm as ever. "Don't look at the noise," she said. "Look at the pattern. They're panicking. That's good." She'd filed the injunction, and within days we received a court order freezing all further transactions in the Ridgeline Heights development. The county couldn't record another sale, refinance, or lien until the matter was resolved. It was a small win, but it was the first time I felt like the ground was shifting back beneath my feet. 2 nights later, a pickup slowed outside my house. Someone tossed an envelope into my driveway and drove off. Inside, a printed letter. No signature, just a message. "You're playing with fire. Walk away." I called Lydia. She told me to keep it and not respond. "Fear is their cheapest weapon," she said. "If they're threatening you, it means we're close." The next morning, she emailed me a PDF titled Chain of Title Discrepancy Report. Her message said, "Look at page 6. I scrolled, and my breath caught. There, on the official plat maps, were 2 overlapping survey lines, one real, one fake. The forged survey had quietly moved the property boundary 300 feet east, just enough to cover the entire development footprint. It wasn't a clerical error. It was surgical theft. Lydia called that afternoon. "Dakota, I found who did it." The signature on the false survey belongs to a contractor named Evan Cole. Used to work for the county's engineering department before being fired for falsifying records. "And he's working for Whitmore now?" I asked. "Not directly," she said. "But his consulting firm approved every Ridgeline Heights permit. That was the crack in the wall we needed." The next day, Lydia filed an emergency motion with the federal district court, requesting a full audit of the development's title documents and permits. When Cassandra's lawyers tried to block it, the judge asked one question: "Can you provide proof of lawful ownership transfer?" They couldn't. The motion was granted. That night I sat on my porch watching the sunset behind the mountains. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something like peace. The fight was far from over, but now it wasn't just me versus a gated community. It was me and the truth versus their empire of lies. I thought about my grandfather's note again. "Don't let the bastards take what's yours." I smiled faintly. "Don't worry, Grandpa," I said aloud. "I'm not letting go. You can't hide the truth behind white picket fences forever." 3 weeks after the court granted the injunction, Ridgeline Heights was buzzing, but not from celebration. The subdivision's residents were restless. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some homeowners whispered about title disputes. Others said a squatter was suing for money. But a few, just a few, were starting to ask the right questions. And that's when I met Aaron and Melissa Tate. They found my number through a county clerk. Aaron left a voicemail that said, "Mr. Flint, we bought a house in Ridgeline Heights. Our mortgage company just froze our title insurance. We need to talk." When I pulled up to their beige stucco home, the irony hit me. I was standing on my own land, invited as a guest. Their 2 kids played in the driveway with chalk drawings, oblivious to the war unfolding beneath their feet. Aaron opened the door before I could knock. He was mid-30s, broad-shouldered, eyes tired in a way only new homeowners know. Melissa stood behind him, holding a mug with both hands like it was armor. "Come in," Aaron said. "We just want to understand what's going on." Their living room still smelled like new paint. Boxes half unpacked, TV still on the floor. Melissa handed me coffee and I noticed her hands shaking. "We didn't know anything," she said. "Our realtor said the land was cleared, zoned, everything legit. But now the bank says there's a federal claim. Are we living on stolen property?" I hesitated, then decided they deserved honesty. "Yes," I said quietly. "You didn't steal it," but someone sold it who had no right to. Aaron rubbed his temples. We've put our life savings into this place. We can't just walk away. I'm not asking you to, I said. My fight's not with you. It's with the people who built this neighborhood. That was when I saw it, the shift. The moment they realized we were on the same side. Melissa whispered, Cassandra told everyone you were a scammer. I figured, I said. Well, Aaron muttered. She's been acting nervous lately. Canceled 2 HOA meetings. Maybe she knows something's coming. Word travels fast in places where lawns are measured by HOA tape measures. Within days, other homeowners reached out, quietly, cautiously, like spies in enemy territory. One woman named June, a retired teacher, showed me her title documents. The notary signature was smudged, the same Evan Cole Lydia had found on the forged survey. I forwarded it all to Lydia, who replied with a single line. They forged the homeowner deeds too. This is systemic fraud. That night Lydia called me. Dakota, you're not going to like this, she said. Whitmore's lawyers just filed a counterclaim accusing you of fraud and harassment. They're trying to flip the narrative before we go public. I laughed, hollow and angry. They stole my land and they're suing me? That's how people like Cassandra operate, Lydia said. When the truth gets too close, they weaponize perception. The next morning, I drove back to Ridgeline Heights. As I slowed past the gate, the same security guard from before stepped out. Only this time, he didn't smirk. Morning, Mr. Flint, he said quietly. They told me not to let you in, but my cousin works at the county office. I know what they did. Be careful, sir. They're cornered animals now. That sentence stayed with me. Cornered animals? I parked outside the subdivision and walked in anyway. The air felt different, heavy, expectant. Homeowners stood in clusters murmuring. Cassandra's white Range Rover was parked in front of the HOA clubhouse. When she saw me, her perfect posture stiffened like a statue cracking under pressure. Well, if it isn't the landowner himself, she said. Come to take more pictures. No, I said. Just wanted to see how the empire's holding up. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. You really think anyone's going to believe your story? You're fighting progress, Mr. Flint. Families live here. Children go to school here. You're the past. I stepped closer. You built your future on a graveyard of lies. And now the walls are closing in. For the first time I saw it. Fear. A flicker, quick as a blink, behind her expensive sunglasses. That night, Aaron texted me. She just called an emergency HOA meeting for tomorrow. Said it's about the legal situation. Want to come? Lydia's advice was immediate. Go. Record everything. The next evening, 30 homeowners packed into the community clubhouse. Cassandra stood at the front, manicured hands gripping a microphone like she could strangle it. Folks, she began, you may have seen rumors online about ownership issues. I want to assure you, Ridgeline Heights is 100% legitimate. This man, she gestured toward me, is attempting to extort the development for millions. Gasps, whispers. Someone shouted, but our title insurance got pulled. Another man stood. And the county put a hold on my refinance. Cassandra's voice wavered. That's just a clerical issue. Then Melissa spoke. You said the land was cleared and inspected. Why does my deed have a fake signature? Murmurs turned to noise. Cassandra tried to keep control, but the crowd was slipping. Aaron raised his phone. We've all seen the federal court order, Cassandra. You lied to us. Her composure shattered. You think you can turn on me? She snapped. Without me, this place would still be forest and dirt. I stood. Exactly my forest, my dirt. The room fell silent. I walked to the front and placed a copy of my grandfather's 1971 deed on the table. This is the truth. I didn't come here to take homes. I came here to take back my name. For a moment, no one spoke. Then someone in the back clapped. Then another. Within seconds, the room was filled with applause. Quiet, uncertain, but real. Cassandra's face went pale. She grabbed her purse, muttered something about her lawyer, and stormed out. Outside, Aaron caught up with me. She's finished, he said. The neighborhood's turning against her. Not yet, I said. But the cracks are showing. As I drove away, I saw porch lights flick on across Ridgeline Heights. Families standing outside, talking in hushed voices, looking toward the clubhouse. For the first time, they weren't looking at me like the enemy. They were looking at her. And somewhere deep inside, I knew The real battle was about to begin. When a kingdom is built on lies, it doesn't fall from the outside. It rots from within. 2 days after the HOA meeting exploded, Ridgeline Heights was in chaos. Emails flew through the neighborhood faster than wildfire. Subject lines like "Cassandra lied," "Fraud investigation," and "Do we even own our homes?" By Monday morning, the Boulder County Sheriff's Department had arrived. Not for me this time, but for Cassandra. I watched from my truck, parked just outside the subdivision gate, as 2 uniformed officers walked into the HOA office with clipboards. Cassandra came out 20 minutes later, her face pale beneath a layer of designer foundation. She wasn't handcuffed, not yet, but her expression said everything. She'd just been cornered by something she couldn't charm, bribe, or intimidate. That afternoon, Lydia called me from Denver. "They've officially opened a criminal inquiry," she said, voice steady but energized. "Forgery, fraudulent conveyance, tax evasion, the works. And get this, your friend Evan Cole? He's already flipped." I blinked. "Flipped?" "Yep," Lydia said. "He's cooperating with investigators. Says Cassandra's company paid him $50,000 under the table to falsify boundary surveys and deed records." "50,000, I said softly. "To steal $4 million. Lydia chuckled dryly. "Crooks always sell cheap. It's their curse." By midweek, the local news caught on. "Luxury development under investigation for land fraud," the headlines read. They showed drone footage of Ridgeline Heights, rows of perfect beige homes gleaming under Colorado sunlight. And then an old photo of me with my grandfather at the same spot, back when it was just trees and red soil. Suddenly, I wasn't the villain anymore. I was the man who'd stood his ground. My phone didn't stop ringing. Reporters, lawyers, even families from the subdivision who wanted to apologize. Melissa texted, "Neighbors are forming a group to sue Whitmore for fraud. You started something bigger than your land, Dakota." It hit me. This wasn't just my fight anymore. It was everyone's. But Cassandra wasn't going down quietly. 3 nights later, I woke to headlights outside my house. A car idled at the edge of my driveway. Then, crack! A gunshot shattered my mailbox. By the time I reached the door, the car was gone. The next morning, Lydia showed up in person, her usual calm replaced by steel. "Enough," she said. "We're filing for a restraining order and adding intimidation to the list. This is no longer just a civil case. It's criminal." She pulled a folder from her briefcase and spread documents across my kitchen table, the same table where I'd once laid out my grandfather's papers. "These," she said, tapping one, "are the shell companies Whitmore used to move the money. And here," she flipped another, "is the fake notary stamp they used for your grandfather's forged signature. Every detail matches Cassandra's development office printer logs." I stared at the papers. "How did you even find this?" Lydia smiled faintly. "Let's just say the IRS doesn't like being lied to. We had a few quiet allies." 2 weeks later, the court date arrived. The federal courthouse in Denver loomed like a fortress of glass and judgment. I walked in wearing the same old Carhartt jacket Cassandra once mocked, a quiet statement that I didn't need to look rich to stand for what was mine. Cassandra sat at the defendant's table, surrounded by lawyers, her expression blank but trembling at the edges. The judge, a woman with eyes sharp enough to cut marble, began by reviewing the case summary. Plaintiff, Dakota Flint, legal heir of the Flint estate. Defendant, Whitmore Development Group and Cassandra Whitmore, president. Lydia stood. "Your Honor, this is not a dispute of paperwork. It's a story of theft concealed under bureaucracy. The defendants not only forged signatures and manipulated surveys, they used those lies to steal an entire community's trust." Then she placed the original 1971 deed on the bench, the same leather-bound document that smelled faintly of pipe tobacco and history. William Flint's last recorded payment. "April 2022, Lydia said, "proves continuous ownership. There was never any lapse. The defendant's entire claim rests on falsified documents, all traced back to their office computers." Cassandra's attorney tried to object, but the judge silenced him with a look. "Ms. Whitmore," the judge said, "did you or your company authorize or facilitate the falsification of ownership documents?" Cassandra's lips parted, and for the first time I saw it. The mask slipping, the fear fully visible. She opened her mouth to speak, but Lydia spoke first. Your Honor, before she answers, I'd like to enter Exhibit 47, a sworn statement from Evan Cole admitting he was directed by Ms. Whitmore to alter the property lines for financial gain. Cassandra froze. Her lawyer put his hand on her arm, whispering urgently, but it was too late. The judge leaned back, exhaled slowly, then said 6 words that hit like thunder. This court recognizes the plaintiff's ownership. The room went silent. My heart slammed in my chest. The judge continued, effective immediately, Whitmore Development Group is to cease all operations on the disputed property, and ownership reverts to the Flint estate. Further, the matter of criminal liability will proceed under separate investigation. I turned to Lydia. She gave a small nod. No celebration, just quiet satisfaction. You did it, she whispered. No, I said, voice shaking. We did. Outside, reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed. Someone asked, Mr. Flint, what are you going to do with the land now that it's legally yours again? I looked past them, toward the mountains, the sky, the memory of my grandfather's hand on my shoulder when I was a boy. I'm going to rebuild the forest, I said, the way he left it. A month later, the bulldozers returned, but this time, they weren't there to build homes. They were clearing debris. Some homeowners chose to stay. Others left after settlements were offered by the state. Cassandra's empire was gone. Rumor was she'd taken a plea deal to avoid prison, 6 months of house arrest and millions in restitution. Evan Cole vanished into witness protection. Whitmore Development filed for bankruptcy. And me? I spent that fall replanting the first line of pine trees with Aaron, Melissa, and their kids helping out. As I pressed the first seedling into the dirt, I whispered the same words Grandpa once told me. The land remembers who loves it. That night, under a sky so clear it looked unreal, I sat on the tailgate of my old Silverado, the same truck Cassandra had mocked, the same one that had carried me through every mile of this fight. The wind whispered through the new pines, and I swear I could almost hear my grandfather's voice. Don't let the bastards take what's yours. I smiled. Don't worry, Grandpa, I said softly. They didn't. Winning in court doesn't end the war. It just changes the battlefield. 3 months had passed since the court ruling, but victory didn't feel like fireworks or confetti. It felt like silence, the kind that comes when the noise finally dies and you're left to count what's still standing. Ridgeline Heights wasn't the glamorous neighborhood it once pretended to be. Half the homes stood empty now. Driveways cracked, lawns gone brown, for sale signs leaning under the wind. The other half housed families like Aaron and Melissa, who decided to stay, to rebuild something honest on top of the ashes. Sometimes I drove past just to look. Not out of pride, more like disbelief. Every cul-de-sac, every curb, every streetlight had been part of the theft that almost broke me. Now it was part of the proof that I survived it. Lydia said the fallout had been massive. Over 20 lawsuits, she told me on the phone one morning. Homeowners suing Whitmore for fraud, title companies suing the county for oversight, the state attorney general reviewing every permit issued under Cassandra's name. It's a domino line, Dakota. You knocked the first piece over. Feels weird, I said. I never wanted to destroy anyone's life. I just wanted mine back. That's what makes you different from them, Lydia said quietly. Cassandra, meanwhile, had disappeared from the public eye. Her plea deal had been finalized. 6 months of house arrest, $2.7 million restitution, and a lifetime ban from real estate licensing. The local paper ran one last headline before the world moved on. Whitmore Development. President found guilty of fraud, former HOA, leader to serve sentence, no mugshot, no apology, just a name reduced to a headline, like she'd always treated everyone else. The land itself was different now. I'd cleared the last of the construction debris, fenced the perimeter, and worked with a reforestation group to replant native pines across the property. Some of the homeowners volunteered, others just watched. It didn't matter. The soil didn't care about grudges, only about growth. One afternoon, Aaron showed up with his son, a little boy named Caleb. The kid held a sapling almost as tall as he was. "This one's for your grandpa," he said proudly, planting it beside the old fire road. I swallowed hard. "Yeah," I said softly. "He'd like that." The media tried to keep the story alive. They called it the Colorado land heist. Documentaries, podcasts, even a Netflix inquiry, all wanting the rights. Lydia told me to consider it, but I couldn't. It wasn't entertainment to me. It was blood, sweat, and memory. Still, I let one journalist visit. A young woman named Renee from the Denver Post. She wasn't there for drama. She wanted the truth. She asked, "What did it feel like when you realized the land was gone?" "Like someone erased part of my family," I said. "And when you got it back?" I looked at the forest behind us, the young trees swaying in the wind. Like it forgave me for being gone so long. The hardest part wasn't the court or the media. It was the quiet moments, when the adrenaline was gone and the weight of everything I'd lost hit me. I'd spent 2 years fighting strangers, but the truth was, I'd also lost time with my own family. My kids were grown, both living out of state. My ex-wife sent a short text after the verdict. "Congrats. Grandpa would be proud." I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know what to say. Winning doesn't always mean healing. Then one evening, Lydia called unexpectedly. "You should know," she said. "They're auctioning off the unsold homes at Ridgeline Heights next month. The county wants to recoup some losses." I laughed. "They're selling them again?" "Legally this time," she said. "But you have first right of refusal. You could buy them for pennies compared to what they cost to build." I thought about it. The irony of it all, buying back pieces of what had already belonged to me. What would I even do with them? I asked. "Whatever you want," she said. "Maybe turn them into something better." That night I couldn't sleep. I walked the edge of the property, flashlight in hand, following the same trail my grandfather once took when he marked the boundary lines. The pines whispered in the wind, the same sound they'd made 50 years ago. I thought about Lydia's words. Turn it into something better. Maybe that's what Grandpa meant all along. Don't let them take what's yours wasn't just about land. It was about purpose, about not letting the world's greed strip away what makes you decent. A month later, I made my decision. I bought 3 of the abandoned homes, the ones closest to the old ridge. Not to live in, but to repurpose. One became a small nature education center. Another, a workshop for replanting programs. The third, I donated to the local forestry department as a ranger outpost. The county called it the Flint Restoration Project. I just called it coming home. One evening, Aaron and Melissa hosted a small cookout for the families who'd stayed. No HOA, no fancy rules. Just people, kids, food, laughter, the way neighborhoods were supposed to be. Aaron raised a glass. "To the man who taught us that owning land isn't about fences. It's about roots." Everyone clinked cups. I smiled, looking out at the sunset dipping behind the rebuilt forest. Cassandra's empire had crumbled. My name had been cleared, but more importantly, the land, my grandfather's land, was alive again. And for the first time in years, so was I. As the stars came out, I sat back in my old folding chair, fire crackling nearby. The night was calm, but my heart wasn't empty. It was full. Full of memory, full of loss, full of something that finally felt like peace. Because justice doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes, it just comes with quiet, the kind that tells you the fight was worth it. Some stories end in courtrooms. Others end where they began, in the soil. It was spring again when the land finally felt alive. The mountain air had that sharp, sweet scent of pine sap and rain. Birds were back, nesting in the new trees we'd planted last fall. The grass had started covering the scars left by bulldozers and tire tracks. For the first time in years, the property didn't look like a crime scene. It looked like home. I stood at the edge of the ridge, hands in my pockets, watching sunlight break through the clouds. Beneath me lay acres of green returning to form. It wasn't just recovery, it was resurrection. A small wooden sign now stood at the entrance. The Flint Land Trust, dedicated to preserving the land for future generations. Lydia helped me form the trust. It meant that even after I was gone, no one could ever buy, subdivide, or commercialize the land again. It belonged to the earth now, legally untouchable. "Your grandfather would have been proud," Lydia said, running her fingers over the engraved letters. "He used to say land has memory," I told her. "Maybe now it'll remember the right things." I spent most mornings working with volunteers, students, rangers, and a few of the old homeowners who hadn't moved away. We built walking trails, small observation decks, even a cabin for educational retreats. One of the kids from the local school, a quiet teenager named Jamie, came up to me one afternoon while we were planting trees. "Is it true this used to be a neighborhood?" he asked. "Almost," I said, smiling. "But it was never meant to be." "What's it meant to be now?" I looked at the ridge, the trees, the sky. "Something honest," I said. By summer, the project had become bigger than me. Environmental groups reached out. The county, once embarrassed by its role, now funded part of the restoration. Local families visited on weekends for picnics and nature walks. It was strange. The same place that had once symbolized greed now drew people because it was pure. No gates, no fees, no board meetings, just open sky and dirt paths. One afternoon, a group of children were playing near the creek when I overheard one of them yell, "Tag!"
"You're the HOA!"
Everyone laughed. Even I did, because maybe that's what healing really was, when pain turns into a story worth laughing about. Then, one day I received a letter. It was from Cassandra Whitmore. Her handwriting was neat, deliberate, almost unfamiliar. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Dakota, I don't expect forgiveness. I only hope that one day you'll believe I didn't start out evil. I got lost chasing something I thought would make me untouchable. You were right. The land isn't power, it's belonging. Cassandra." I stared at it for a long time, unsure how to feel. Anger had burned out months ago, leaving only a quiet sort of pity. She'd built walls her whole life, and now they were her prison. I didn't reply, but I didn't throw the letter away either. I placed it inside my grandfather's old tin box, the one where he kept property deeds and family photos. It felt like closure in its own strange way. Later that evening, Lydia came by with takeout and a bottle of red wine. We sat on the porch of the new cabin as the sun dipped behind the mountains. "You ever think about selling this place and moving somewhere peaceful?" she asked, half smiling. "This is peaceful," I said. She nodded, sipping her wine. "You know, you could start a nonprofit, turn this whole project into something bigger. Teach people how to protect what's theirs before it's stolen." I thought about it, not just as an idea, but as a calling. Maybe the fight wasn't over. It had just changed shape. 2 weeks later, I registered the Flint Foundation. Its mission was simple: to help homeowners and small landowners defend their rights against predatory developers. It started local, workshops, legal aid, awareness campaigns, but soon the story spread online. Videos, interviews, articles, all telling the same message. Stand your ground, because your roots matter. People began writing from all over the country. Oh, farmer in Texas who'd been cheated out of his pasture. An old couple in Arizona fighting an HOA over water rights. A widow in Florida whose land was seized through forged signatures. Each story echoed my own. And I realized the system that tried to erase me had tried to erase countless others too. So I gave them what my grandfather gave me: belief. One afternoon, months later, my daughter Emily came to visit. We hadn't spoken much since the trial. But when she stepped out of her car and saw the forest, her eyes widened. "Dad, it's beautiful," she whispered. "Thanks," I said, smiling nervously. "It's not exactly what I planned, but it turned out okay." She laughed. "Grandpa would have loved this." "Yeah," I said softly. "I think he's still here, somewhere between those trees." We walked the trail together, not talking much. Just the crunch of gravel, the rustle of leaves, and that feeling, the kind that tells you maybe, just maybe, the past is ready to forgive you. That night, after Emily left, I sat on the ridge again. The stars above were endless, just like they used to be when I was a kid sitting here beside my grandfather. The land stretched below, alive, whole and free. Maybe that's all any of us ever really want. Not ownership, not power, but connection to something that lasts longer than we do. And as the wind brushed through the pines, I heard his voice again, faint but clear. "Don't let them take what's yours." This time, I smiled, because now I knew what yours really meant. What you build can vanish, but what you stand for, that outlives you. 3 years after the trial, The land didn't just belong to me anymore. It belonged to everyone who believed in something worth protecting. The Flint Foundation had grown from a cabin office into a full-fledged network. Lawyers, surveyors, students, people from all over the country volunteered. We weren't just fighting land theft anymore. We were restoring trust. Every month, someone new walked through our doors, carrying their own version of my story. A single mother whose HOA demanded she tear down a wheelchair. An old rancher whose pasture was taken for a future road that never came. A veteran whose tiny cabin was condemned because a developer wanted lakefront access. Different faces, same injustice. And every time I told them what Lydia once told me. The law isn't just for those who can afford it. It's for those brave enough to fight for it. That winter, I visited my grandfather's grave for the first time since the court ruling. The stone was simple, just his name, the years, and a small engraving of a mountain ridge. I brushed off the snow and placed a small pine sapling beside it. "Your land's still here, Grandpa," I whispered, "and it's helping more people than I ever imagined." For a moment, the wind stilled, silent and heavy, like the forest was listening. And then a gust swept through the trees, scattering snowflakes into sunlight. It felt like an answer. Months later, I was invited to speak at a land rights conference in Denver. Standing backstage, watching hundreds of people fill the seats, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't just Dakota Flint, the guy who lost his land. I was part of something far bigger. When I stepped up to the microphone, I paused, not for dramatic effect, but to breathe in the moment. 3 years ago, I began. I stood on land that had been stolen from me, acres my grandfather spent his life protecting. I thought I was fighting for dirt and trees, but I was really fighting for memory, for belonging, for every person who's been told they don't matter because someone richer says so. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I saw people nodding, wiping tears. "The law doesn't always see fairness," I continued, "but fairness starts when we refuse to be silent." The applause was long, not loud, just steady. The kind that hums through your bones. When I returned home that night, the cabin lights glowed softly through the snow. Lydia was there, sorting through files by the fire. She'd become more than my lawyer. She was family now. "You killed it up there," she said without looking up. "Think anyone actually listened?" "They did," she said. "You made them care. That's the hard part." I smiled. She poured us each a cup of coffee and we sat quietly, listening to the crackle of the fire. "I'm thinking of stepping back," I said after a while. "Let some of the younger team run things. Maybe even Emily." Lydia looked at me surprised. "You sure?" "Yeah," I said softly. "I've spent my life defending what's mine. Maybe it's time to teach someone else how to do the same." A few weeks later, Emily visited again. She just finished her environmental law degree, inspired, she admitted, by everything that had happened here. She stood at the same ridge where I'd once watched bulldozers tear through the earth. But this time, all she saw were pine trees stretching into the horizon. "So this is where it all started?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, smiling. "And this is where it keeps going." She laughed, brushing wind-blown hair from her face. "You know, Dad, I think Grandpa would have been proud of both of us." "I think so too." That evening, as the sun disappeared behind the Rockies, Emily and I planted a new tree together, right beside the one I'd planted years ago for my grandfather. The air was cool, filled with that earthy scent of promise. When we finished, she placed her hand on the trunk and said, "So, what happens next?" I looked at the horizon, endless and wild, and smiled. "Now," I said, "we protect what's ours. Years from now, when people hike through the Flint Land Trust, they'll see a small bronze plaque by that tree. It reads, 'In memory of William and Dakota Flint, for teaching us that land is not owned, it's inherited from the future, and maybe, if the wind is right, they'll hear that same whisper I once did, soft, strong, and certain. Don't let the bastards take what's yours.'"